Hello, my friend. Welcome to The Pathetic Truth. I'm your host, Yanexi. I'm so glad you're here. I'd like to continue telling you my story of awakening and just like to remind you that my content is not for children. So if the kids are around, please pause and come back to me later when you're alone and you can have a seat, get comfy as I share my story with you. The last episode I talked about the events leading up to Christmas of 2023. And today I'd like to tell you a little bit about what happened that last week of the year through about mid-January of 2024. I'd like to start by reading you a poem called Solitude. This is a short one. How strange it is to long for solitude when one is in love. Only in my aloneness can I get lost in the infinite depth of your eyes, caress the folds of your hands, savor the exquisite intertwining of our tongues as they converge like tango dancers and breathe life into a love story unwritten. I thought this poem would be appropriate because right after Christmas of that year, I found myself in a very sensuous space. And what I mean by that is that I just had a lot more body awareness. I was more aware, I was acutely aware of my surroundings through all my senses, right? And I think I shared this with you that colors seemed brighter. I was more aware of sounds. It was kind of like I was like in a state of wonder, like a child in a way. I was just more appreciative for everything. I could just pick up, I was more sensitive to different kinds of sensations. And I felt more present generally, like I was noticing things that I didn't notice before. I was savoring my meals more, just taking more time to eat and enjoy what I was consuming. I remember what a pleasure it was to just go out to restaurants alone, like for lunch, and just sitting down and taking my time to enjoy my food and drink like I'd never had before. I also felt this desire to spend more time outside. Like I remember that I would come home from work and I would go running to the backyard, take off my shoes and just lay down on the ground like a crazy person. Not that that makes you crazy, but it was just unusual for me. I would just lay my body down on the grass, and I felt this like calm and relief wash over me. It's just a thing that I did, that I just felt was the right thing to do, that would just make me feel very calm. I was just kind of following my feelings. And later I would read about this and I would understand the importance of grounding oneself when one is going through something transformative. And this is one of the things that people do. But I was really just kind of following my feeling. I also would, when I was alone in the house, I was very drawn to music, especially music that had to, that had to do with drums, like drumming and things like that. And I would just enjoy dancing to the beat of the drums, and moving in whichever way I felt like moving. I was just compelled to express myself in various ways. I continued to write. I liked dancing more. And I started painting, actually. My ex-husband had given me a kit for Christmas of 2020. and I never felt like using it. And then I started painting. I was kind of terrible at it, but it was an outlet. It was another way for me to try to express what I was feeling that I didn't understand. I remember the first painting that I drew, one of them had to do with eyes because I was so perplexed by what eye contact had done to me, by how that had affected me. It's just different things like that. You know, it just felt really good to be able to express what was going on inside. At about that time, too, I started reflecting on my marriage and basically how I had played my role as a wife or as a girlfriend before I got married. Because we had been together 10 years before we got married, and then we were married a total of 5 years. I remember seeing this painting of a woman. I don't know the title, but it was a painting of a naked woman carrying a bull, and I thought, I identified that with that painting so much. I never saw myself as a victim. I still don't see myself as a victim. It's not about that. When I started thinking, you know, why do I have such strong feelings for another man? I thought, this has to be a symptom of something wrong with my marriage. Because for many years, I pretty much had blinders on, which is how I typically am in relationship. When I'm in love, I really, really don't notice other men. So I thought, you know, what this did is it started unearthing a lot of things that had been foundational things that were wrong with my relationship with my ex-husband. Things that had been, from the beginning, been eating away at our relationship. And I feel that I started thinking at that time, I felt that for many years I had carried burdens that were never mine to carry, that nobody asked me to carry, but I felt, well, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to get this done. Somebody's got to set boundaries. Somebody's got to propel us forward. And, you know, to some degree in my culture, it was like, well, you know, that's you know, like the men are just like that, right? That's just men. So a woman's got to step up and do what she's got to do. And so I always just kind of felt that's my role. And when this happened, I started questioning, well, is it? You know, did I have to carry all these burdens all these years? And I started reflecting on my marriage at that time. I also just started changing my behavior. I thought, I realized, okay, well, my prayer for connections, for deeper connections was answered, but then I had to do my part. And if I wanted friendships and more connections, then I had to get over my social anxiety. I'd always been kind of shy and just anxious in groups, and I thought, you know, I need to try to make friends even if I'm scared. And one of the things that I feel held me back from making friends for many years or just establishing connections with people was the issue with eye contact. I was born with a blind left eye, and it's also misaligned, and that I sort of learned from the time that I was little, you know, not to look at people, because I felt like this is going to be just kind of confusing for people, and you know, it was just an issue for me. So, I mean, the very basic thing of eye contact, right? That's how you start a connection, you start a relationship. You start it with eye contact. And this is a thing I had trouble doing. And essentially, what Vincent did initially was establish that eye contact, and I felt seen and I felt transformed in a second. But I thought, if I am going to make more friends, I now have to get over this and I have to get over my anxiety. And so I was so compelled to not just befriend other people, because I knew I had been given this chance for this thing that I wanted. But I especially wanted to befriend this stranger who was a source of fascination for me. I thought that by doing that, first of all, I would demystify him, because I felt like I am putting a human being on this pedestal. He's got to come down from there. I'm sure he's a regular guy. And as I start talking to him and all the other guys and the people at the gym, these feelings will dissipate, because I'm going to realize that he's just a regular person. That was just logically how I tried to explain that. So I went in and I took off my headphones and started talking to different people. And one night I remember he was close by, and I thought, I wonder what his name is. I have to find out his name. And he was talking to someone else at the gym, and I heard his name and I thought, wow, okay. And I said, come on, have some courage. Ask him something. Ask him something stupid. So I did the thing that people do at gyms. Are you using this machine? Okay. I did that thing. And so I said, Vincent. And the guy turned around like he looked like a top. I mean, I said, are you using this machine? He said, no. And I said, okay, that was it. And I thought, okay, I know his name. So he already started to become a little more real to me, because before then there were like glances and the very rare hey. And I started feeling like the gym was such a safe space to socialize. I already started going in and people started knowing me and saying hi and making conversation. I made friends of all ages. There was someone in there who became very dear to me for a time. He was in his 90s. And, thinking back to that, I'm like, had I not gotten over my fear, I would have missed out on getting to know this very special person. And young people also. And, people, it's like when you open up, they open up too, and something really beautiful happens. And maybe you're saying, well, duh. But for me, this was a new thing, because I was always so closed off most of the time in groups. I felt so invigorated by these interactions. Like, I thought, I'm kind of coming out of my shell. This is incredible. And I started feeling at that time like a stranger to myself. Right? Who is this person? And at the same time, when it came to Vincent, I felt the feelings continue to intensify, and they were both emotional and very, very physical. Physical things I had never felt before. And I remember commenting to one of my gym friends that I felt feral, because that's the best way to describe what I was feeling. We had just exchanged glances. We started exchanging smiles. I would go in there and I would see a smile. And it meant everything to me. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Because before that, Vincent always kind of seemed very to himself as well. And I thought, wow, this person is affecting me and I'm affecting him. And it was such a beautiful thing to see. The power of kind of opening up and noticing people and acknowledging people's presence. Also at that time, once I found out his name, I noticed he had a public social media page and I started following that. But I never contacted him, but I did start following that. And he had a few pictures on there and I learned a little bit very little about his past that he shared publicly. And that'll become a little relevant later on. That's why I'm mentioning it. And through this process, I continue to see also the power of the spoken word, which is something I mentioned last episode. The manifestation power. I didn't believe in manifestation before this. I do now. But the power of the spoken word, there was this one night I went in there and everybody was in a great mood. And I, had already made some gym friends, gym bros, we call them, right? And I started joking to my gym friends. I said, you know what? And this occurred to me just in a spur of the moment kind of thing. I said, I'm going to write a book. And all of you are going to be in this story. And I was kidding. Little did I know. And I started just coming up with character names based on their traits. I said, and you're going to be this person. This is going to be your name. And you're going to be that person. And I was getting high fives. And I thought, this is amazing. And then Vincent was kind of in front of me. And I said, well, there's also Zeus. He's the main character. And one of the gym bros said, who's Zeus? And I said, I can't tell you. But Vincent looked at me and I think I saw a smirk. He knew I was talking about him, I feel. Again, I was joking, but I feel that there was power to that because that plan, there was a thought in my head. It came out and it already started. I feel like I already started weaving it into reality the second it escaped my lips. I also started oversharing my feelings about Vincent with someone at the gym that I felt was kind of a friend, I guess. I was wrong about that, but I started oversharing because I feel like I had this internal voice that said, if you say too much, I was gonna sabotage it, which is exactly what I needed to do. I knew that as fascinated as I was by this weird thing that I felt with Vincent that was going on, I felt that saying it, oversharing it, telling somebody how I felt was going to jinx it. It was going to sabotage it and it was going to go away. And I needed it to go away because I was married. And I think maybe it did. I think that me oversharing my feelings and my experiences with someone else about what I was feeling for Vincent, I don't know, I think that person probably said his own version or whatever to other people. And, well, that would put a wrench in the machine. I don't know. I feel that maybe that contributed to what would happen later. But I don't regret it because I think that things worked out the way that they were meant to. This internal voice that I talk about, and I'm going to continue to talk about, it's very important because this is a voice that would get louder. One particular night, I went into the gym and Vincent was doing his exercises, and when he saw me, we locked eyes, and it's like he momentarily stopped what he was doing and he smiled and I smiled. And I heard this voice very clearly. And it's the voice of, I don't know, intuition. It's the voice of conscience. It's, whatever you want to call it. It was very, very loud. And it said to me, are you sure you want to do this? And I kind of I hesitated for a couple of seconds. But because I felt that this was a huge decision. And I said, yes. Yes, I want to do this. And when I tell you that in that moment, I felt like I signed a contract. like I was signing up for something really, really big. Up until that moment, I feel like I had been wrestling or fighting with like an inappropriate infatuation. But when I said yes to that question internally, I surrendered. I surrendered to whatever I was feeling. I surrendered to whatever lay ahead of me, which I knew was a big thing. I just kind of said yes. And there was this like, like, I made a choice. I made a choice to just go with it, to let it happen, to fall devastatingly into something. I mean, I had no idea how profound this was going to be, but I knew it was big and it was very important. And something inside of me told me to say yes to this surrender. And like, it was like Alice in Wonderland following the white rabbit, like the Matrix, red pill or blue pill. I felt that I didn't quite know what I was signing up for, but I felt that I needed to surrender to it because this was so unlike anything that I had ever experienced before. So there's a couple of things. I feel like my soul, a concept that before this I was very skeptical about, I'm not anymore. My soul was pulled towards something that it needed for its development. But the other point is that falling fully for this person, but not just for this person, but surrendering to what lay ahead was a choice. It was a choice. I could have said no. I could have walked out that door and never returned. And I would have stayed asleep. And I mean, I feel that eventually this would have happened in another setting, in a different way, but it would have happened. But I made the choice to say yes to it because that's what felt right for me. And it opened a door, it opened a path, it opened whatever, a portal, you could say, because after this voice of intuition, it got louder. And other things, I started having other experiences as well. Things like very vivid and cryptic dreams, visions, all sorts of things I had never experienced before started happening after that. And it's things that I would like to share with you in future episodes as things start to unfold. And certainly between me and Vincent, our unspoken flirtation, whatever that was, with glances and smiles and things like that, that seemed to intensify a little bit. But my feelings, because I don't know what he felt, I can't speak to what he felt and thought, my feelings continued to intensify. But again, I started having experiences that I had never had before after this, after I said yes to this question. So I made that choice. And with that, I'd like to end this episode and invite you to join me next week as I continue to share my story. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, my friend. Until then, take good care of yourself.